Can I ask all of our speakers to please take their seats? We are about to start. Ahmad. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us at this side event. I know everybody's very busy with lots of events taking place, so thank you for joining us. My name's Karen Smaller. I'm from the Shamba Center for Food and Climate, and I will be your moderator for this event. We do have simultaneous interpretation into French. Donc, si vous parlez français, vous pouvez écouter la présentation en français. Two of our speakers will be speaking in French. So if you only speak English, I suggest you get close to one of the earpieces. This is a joint event with 13 co-organizers and 10 speakers. We have 3 speakers joining us online and 7 speakers here today. So yes, it's a little bit over the top, but it's also a reflection of how we want to work together to effect change. So you're going to be hearing today about the Hungry for Action campaign, about the Zero Hunger Coalition, and about a new project that we will be launching called HESAT 2030. The purpose of this side event is to make the case for catalyzing coordinated action and evidence to build a future where when the next big shock hits, it doesn't lead to another food crisis. So yes, shocks are inevitable and they're becoming more frequent, but crises are not. Because if we make the right investments in the most effective areas, in the countries that need it most, and at the scale required, then the next big shock will not spell doom for millions of people. Our speakers are going to start today by setting the scene. We will then look back at the achievements of the Zero Hunger Coalition since it was launched at the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit, before we move to the launch of this new project, HESAT 2030. And then we will hear from the governments of Madagascar, Malawi, Germany, the European Commission, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation about how they are taking action through the Zero Hunger Coalition and through other initiatives. So our first speaker is Asma Latif. She's joining us online. She works for the SDG 2 Advocacy Hub. And Asma, you're going to tell us, or please tell us, how are we going to achieve this a long-term agenda when we keep moving from crisis to crisis?
Thank you very much, Karen, for the introduction and for having me join virtually. And sorry, I couldn't be there in person. So the last UN Food Systems Summit was held during the COVID pandemic. And in the 2 years since, the world has continued, as you said, to lurch from one crisis to another. We've heard much about the impact of the Ukraine war on food, fuel, and fertilizer prices. And just last week, there was another setback on the Black Sea Grain Initiative. In addition, unprecedented droughts, wildfires, and floods are affecting all parts of the world. Low and lower middle-income countries have literally run out of fiscal space to protect their most vulnerable populations from these polycrises. The majority of low-income countries are in debt distress, and many experience unsustainable levels of debt. We saw a bit of progress last month in Paris with an agreement to restructure Zambia's debt, but much more action is needed. These compounding crises are contributing to much hardship. While it was heartening to learn last week with the launch of the SOFI that global hunger remains relatively unchanged between 2021 and 2022, driven mostly by progress in Asia and Latin America, hunger is still very much on the rise in Western Asia, the Caribbean, and Africa, and still far above pre-pandemic levels. 122 million more people are experiencing hunger now than in 2019. As you mentioned, Karen, if we've learned anything, it is that there will be more setbacks, especially with climate-induced unpredictable weather patterns. So how do we break the cycle of crisis upon crisis and build resilience so that we prevent backsliding in food security and nutrition, which, as we all know, underpin health, education, gender equity, livelihoods, and productivity? We no longer have the luxury to deal with one crisis at a time. We need to rethink how we respond to crises. We must take action urgently, both to save lives and prevent hunger and malnutrition from rising, and to build resilience. Humanitarian needs have doubled since 2020. OCHA's appeals for 2023 is around $50 billion for a second year in a row. This is simply unsustainable. The polycrises over the last few years have revealed significant vulnerabilities in our food systems. We now have an opportunity to address these vulnerabilities and to position food systems as key to tackling multiple challenges simultaneously. Building resilience in our food system begins with smallholder farmers. Supporting them to diversify food production must be a priority, both in terms of what we grow and where and how we grow it. Fortunately, we have evidence-based solutions that would improve the livelihoods of smallholder farmers and deliver better nutrition equitably, sustainably. And we'll hear more about that in this session. So a few urgent priorities. We must scale evidence-based approaches and in smallholder farmers. We must strengthen shock-responsive social protection and national and subnational capacity to minimize disruptions from shocks and to recover quickly. We must support countries that are translating evidence-based approaches into national pathways, strategies, budgets, including repurposing subsidies. And we must focus on the countries and the regions that are bearing the brunt of the crises and are falling behind. Everyone in this room is an expert in food security, nutrition, smallholder agriculture, but the issues that we are discussing over these days are getting lost in the broader discussions. We need to position food systems transformation as the solution to the polycrises. As I mentioned earlier, debt sustainability is a huge challenge. We need to add our voice to urge action on debt relief, to reallocate special drawing rights, to reform the multilateral development banks, to deliver more finance through their balance sheets. And we must continue to make the case for increased ODA using existing budgets better. Without additional and reliable financing, countries simply do not have the fiscal space to do what needs to be done. Finally, we need to collaborate more effectively. We all care passionately about this issue, but the food crisis is not getting enough attention on the political or public agenda. Too often, it's the elephant in the room. We need to change that. And so the SDG 2 Advocacy Hub is partnering with others on the Hungry for Action campaign, a new global campaign to raise awareness. We would love for you all to get involved. Thank you. And back to you, Karen. Sorry.
Thank you, Asma. We've got to move on so that we can get in time for all of our speakers. Smallholders, hungry for action. That's the two words that I retained from Asma's presentation. Let's now move. We're going to stay online to Charles Gwengwe, who's from World Vision in Malawi. Charles, in the context of these multiple crises, where do you think we should focus? And how important are the national pathways like the one that Malawi's developed to support action? Before I hand over the floor, I just want to acknowledge that we have 60 participants joining us also online. I can see you. If you have questions for our Q&A time, those 60 participants online, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. Charles, over to you.
Thank you so much. And all protocols observed. I would want to underline the fact that considering the multiple crises that we are facing currently, and I'll use Malawi as an example. As a country, we deliberately worked on a pathway, national pathway, to address the issues of food insecurity, malnutrition, etc., etc. But what I am seeing that we have to seriously consider is what is coming out from the realities on the ground. It's very clear in our context that we have unbalanced food systems, because we're seeing quite a lot of people needing food support, but we're also seeing issues of malnutrition. And what we're seeing is that if we can't have a robust national pathway, then we will be seeing an additional, I think, probably 2 million plus people needing more support in terms of food. Currently, over 20% of the people in Malawi require food assistance. We're talking of a country that has 70% of them living below poverty line. And the recurrent shocks and poor policies and the absence of a robust national pathway would push a lot more, I think, on the other negative end. You may wish to know that in Malawi, 52% of the population is made of women, and 80% of the people in Malawi depend on smallholder farming. And without national pathway, a robust one, it would be very dangerous. I would really encourage issues of more accountability systems and the more prioritized kind of approach, unlike the current scenario where we have just defined on some actional point, but I felt like the priority actions need to begin to address imbalanced food systems in the short term and medium term, and that has not come out clearly. And so to me, it's a lot more energy contextualized should be put in addressing the imbalanced food systems if we are to change the trends. Over.
Thank you, Charles. Charles has spoken a lot about the national pathways. I now want to move to Francine, who's going to talk to us about the Zero Hunger Coalition. The Zero Hunger Coalition was launched at the summit to help support countries with their national pathways. Francine, what's it achieved and what additional value can it bring?
Merci beaucoup, Karine, pour cette question. La coalition Zéro Faim, effectivement, c'est une plateforme d'abord qui veut catalyser une action coordonnée autour d'actions qui sont fondées premièrement sur des preuves scientifiques et à fort impact. Et celle-ci vise donc notamment à transformer les systèmes alimentaires et atteindre la faim zéro. Aujourd'hui, qu'est la coalition? La coalition, c'est 32 pays, 24 organisations de la société civile, 11 organisations internationales et 44 entreprises qui se sont engagées à travers donc, la coalition, à travers notamment le pledge. Alors, je voudrais surtout rajouter que la coalition, elle a d'abord émergé d'une volonté politique d'éradiquer la faim et transformer ces systèmes alimentaires, mais son objectif est aussi de répondre efficacement aux questions que tous ici, dans cette salle et lors de cette conférence, nous nous posons, à savoir comment y parvenir, quelle méthode utiliser, comment capitaliser sur les interventions les plus impactantes, quels coûts ont ces ambitions et où cet argent doit être investi, et ce de manière efficiente et prioritaire. Alors la coalition, sa valeur, ou en tout cas ce qu'elle propose, c'est de travailler notamment sur 3 piliers. Le premier, c'est effectivement, comme je l'ai annoncé, la science et l'évidence. Le travail de la coalition va reposer tout sur les 10 domaines d'intervention à fort impact qui émergent donc de l'étude que vous devez notamment connaître, CRS 2030, et elle va continuer à renforcer la base de cette connaissance. Et son but est de proposer des solutions concrètes pour transformer les systèmes alimentaires de manière efficiente. Mais aussi, elle aide aussi les pays à opérationnaliser leur feuille de route nationale. Et elle va notamment au-delà, en leur donnant le coût de ces interventions. Il s'agit finalement de définir le coût de l'efficacité. Et c'est pour ça que cette coalition est véritablement importante. Alors, je suis aussi honorée donc de savoir que nous avons Madagascar et notamment le Malawi qui ont bénéficié donc de ces études en cours. Et également noter et remercier notamment le G7 qui a également déclaré leur soutien à la coalition Faim Zéro dans un communiqué de presse du ministère du Développement l'année dernière. Et fortement honorée d'avoir sur cette table l'Union européenne et l'Allemagne. Le second pilier de cette coalition, c'est notamment à travers le pledge, donc l'engagement du secteur privé envers la Faim Zéro. C'est un mécanisme important qui demande aux entreprises d'aligner leurs investissements commerciaux sur une base factuelle de solutions à fort impact, et ce, basé notamment sur l'évidence que apportait CRS 2030. Ce mécanisme aide notamment à mobiliser les ressources supplémentaires du secteur privé pour compléter les ressources du secteur public. Et aujourd'hui, nous sommes véritablement heureux de vous annoncer que 46 entreprises se sont engagées à hauteur de 560 millions de dollars, et cela dans 47 pays prioritaires. Et je vous invite également, donc nous avons un événement parallèle demain de 13h30 à 14h30 dans la salle philippine, et ce sera aussi l'occasion donc d'interagir avec le secteur privé à ce moment-là. Le troisième pilier, il s'agit également de promouvoir un espace de mise en relation entre les donateurs, le secteur privé et d'autres bailleurs de fonds pour mobiliser les ressources nécessaires au financement prioritaire national. Nous tenons compte effectivement de l'évidence, nous tenons compte évidemment des priorités du pays, mais l'investissement ne peut pas devenir simplement d'un seul espace. Il s'agit peut-être donc de proposer un espace où les différents acteurs peuvent s'entendre sur ce qu'il y a de faire. Voilà, la coalition, c'est cela. La coalition a énormément d'ambition. Elle permet aussi à différents acteurs, notamment vous tous, de se retrouver là et d'agir sur des actions concrètes et communes. Et donc, j'invite, pour ceux qui ne sont pas membres, en tout cas, nous rejoindre. Donc, vous pouvez me retrouver donc à la fin de la réunion si vous le souhaitez, ou sinon joindre donc le site web, le zerohunger.org. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Francine. So as Francine mentioned, one of the unique features of this coalition was that it was created on the basis of the scientific evidence from Series 2030, which was a global roadmap. So it's an evidence-based coalition. But we need to continue to make sure that coalition is driven by the latest data, the latest evidence, the latest realistic estimation of costs. And so I'm really thrilled today that we are launching a new project called HESAT 2030. And we have a little video that we will be playing before I give the floor to Jaron Porciello from the University of Notre Dame and to David Laborde from the FAO to help us or to introduce us to this new project and how it's going to help to continue those of us who are taking action on the ground. While I'm letting the video people get ready to show the slides, for those who remember, Ceres 2030 was the Roman goddess of agriculture. HESAT is the cow goddess of Egypt, who is said to produce humanity with milk and sustenance. And it's partly a reflection of where this project is going. Shall I press play? David, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Karen. Good afternoon, everyone in the room, online, and hello, colleagues on the panel. In HESAT 2030, we have a saying, and the saying is, we need to do many things, but we must be organized. Together with our partners, the Zero Hunger Coalition, the Zero Hunger Private Sector Pledge, the Juno Evidence Alliance, and the Food Security and ODA Tracker, we organize around 4 pillars. We catalyze action. We believe in partnerships and advocacy. We create new tools for development, and we focus on the production of new evidence for complex problems. We commit to being science and evidence-based. As a scientist, I believe we cannot allow data, science, and innovative findings that can end hunger sustainably, nutritiously, and equitably to sit on the shelf. We must find ways to put those findings to good use. The UN General Secretary has said that science is one of our best bets to achieving the SDGs. And in Series 2030, we brought together 84 scientists from 23 countries here at FAO to help us use science more effectively to identify ways to end hunger for millions of people. We cannot shy away from complexity. We need science to help us find solutions that can support millions of small-scale producers, their families, and their communities, end hunger sustainably, nutritiously, and equitably. Our scientists put their belief in the scientific process. Paper by paper, more than 100,000 papers in all, they helped us identify sustainable solutions to end hunger. And we're building on the partnerships and the processes and the tools that we need for even more complex problems. Agri-food systems are a principal contributor to climate change, accounting for 1/3 of anthropogenic GHG emissions. And the emissions from from food systems alone could push global temperatures past the thresholds of the Paris Accords. This sobering data point brings me to my final point today. We cannot be afraid to do things differently. We must not be afraid to use new and innovative approaches and technologies and to form new coalitions and alliances to help us address complex, difficult issues. In HESAT 2030, we use artificial intelligence, including large language models, to help us save time, money, and reduce consistencies in analysis. By the end of 2023, we will have analyzed more than 6 million papers across the agri-food system to present what I hope is a living evidence gap map that allows all of us to turn to science much more readily and rapidly. We also use sophisticated cost modeling and other economic models to help us ensure that when we do identify a solution from science, we can move swiftly from evidence to action. And finally, the last point I want to make is that any findings that we make at a global level must always be connected back to the work that we do and the work that we champion at the country level. So the HESAT 2030 project works very closely with the Zero Hunger Coalition and other partners to ensure that we integrate knowledge and findings into other country level activities, including country level deep dives. And we do this because while science might be one of our best bets, we must use innovative approaches in ways that can help us move swiftly from evidence to action. Thank you.
Merci. Merci Jaron, j'ai le plaisir donc d'être entre Jaron et Karine, les deux co-chairs avec moi du comité de pilotage du projet, mais aussi on a la chance pour ce panel d'être entre nos amis de la Fondation Gates et du gouvernement allemand qui soutiennent ce projet et qui soutenaient déjà CERES 2030. Et c'est le premier point que je veux faire. ESAT 2030 est vraiment une évolution, voire même une transformation de CERES 2030. Donc, nous avons gardé les leçons que nous avons apprises de CERES 2030 pour garder ce qui fonctionne, mais aussi répondre aux défis nouveaux et aux attentes nouvelles. CERES 2030, c'était transformer du savoir en preuves. Et SAT 2030, c'est de transformer ces preuves en action. Et toujours en générant du nouveau savoir. Et l'un des mots-clés pour arriver à cela, c'est coordination. Donc, il a déjà été dit qu'au niveau des différents acteurs, grâce à la coalition Zéro Faim, aux engagements du secteur privé, on a une coordination qui a lieu sur aussi comment générer plus de preuves, plus de savoir pour guider les pays, mais aussi avec des outils spécifiques qui sont développés dans ESAT 2030, comme notre outil d'analyse des flux d'aide internationale, où on a rapidement réalisé que les données brutes sur l'aide internationale, qui sont par exemple générées par l'OCDE, ne sont pas suffisantes pour guider une action. Les données, et ces données brutes, c'est des graines. Maintenant, le travail des analystes, c'est de les faire germer, de manière à ce que les consommateurs aient quelque chose de nutritif à consommer. Et donc, par rapport à ces données d'aide, où bien sûr les données d'aide fournies par l'OCDE sont importantes, mais dans le monde d'aujourd'hui, il n'y a pas que l'OCDE, il y a par exemple aussi la Chine. Donc, on doit connecter différents ensembles d'informations. On doit les mettre en cohérence dans un cadre analytique, qui est le cadre que CERES 2030 a mis en place. Mais aussi, on doit permettre aux pays et aux donateurs de comprendre qui fait quoi et où. Parce que souvent, c'est ce que l'on voit. 7 projets d'irrigation dans un même pays, dans les 5 dernières années, non coordonnés. Mais pour collecter cette information, c'est un vrai défi aujourd'hui. Et donc, c'est la valeur ajoutée qu'un projet comme ESAT apporte à cela. Un cadre analytique et des outils pour guider la décision. Mais la coordination, on la voit aussi à d'autres niveaux. Au niveau justement des différents défis auxquels on fait face. La faim dans le monde, c'est un défi majeur. Et malheureusement, aujourd'hui, on a encore 735 millions de personnes qui sont dans la faim chronique. Grâce aux outils développés dans CERES 2030, aujourd'hui, dans la publication du SOFI de la FAO, on a ces projections aussi jusqu'en 2030. Et encore 600 millions seront dans cette faim chronique. Donc, il faut régler cette question de la faim. Mais le manque de calories, ce n'est qu'un élément des défis de l'heure actuelle. Il faut qu'on fournisse des aliments nutritifs et le faire d'une manière durable sous les contraintes environnementales. Et donc, coordonner ces différentes questions d'analyse dans un même outil, c'est extrêmement crucial. On ne peut pas avoir un patchwork d'études ici et là qui devraient miraculeusement donner une histoire cohérente. Et dans ESAT, justement, on utilise des outils de modélisation pour mettre en cohérence ces différents sujets. Et aussi, le monde a changé. Donc, les résultats de CRS 2030, il faut les adapter. Donc oui, on a eu le Covid, on a eu l'année 2022 avec la guerre en Ukraine, avec des chocs environnementaux importants. Cette année, on a des vagues de chaleur, donc vraiment des défis qui s'accélèrent, mais aussi des attentes des communautés, des acteurs et des décideurs politiques qui changent, et donc sur lesquels il faut prendre en compte dans nos analyses. Voilà, je vais m'arrêter là. Merci, Karine.
Merci, David. So that concludes a part where we've looked at the state of play and how we're reacting, but mostly from the perspective of international organizations and civil society. I would now like to turn to our government representatives here and to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Honorable Minister Harifidi Ramilison, the Minister of Agriculture and Livestock of Madagascar. It is a huge honor to have you here with us and to have Madagascar represented at such a high senior level, showing such a strong political engagement from Madagascar in this work. We are very grateful that you are here. We would like to hear from you what Madagascar is doing and how you're working together with the Zero Hunger Coalition. Minister, you have the floor.
Merci de m'avoir donné la parole, Karine. En fait, et aussi merci de nous avoir invités. Pour nous aussi, c'est une grande opportunité de pouvoir partager ce que le gouvernement Madagascar fait en termes pour faire face justement aux crises actuelles. Comme vous le savez, il y a la crise Covid-19, il y a aussi et surtout l'effet des changements climatiques. Et par rapport à cela, Madagascar, qui est un membre convaincu de la coalition Fin Zéro, a élaboré sa feuille de route nationale pour les transformations des systèmes alimentaires, dans lesquels nous avons considéré 3 principaux axes qui sont d'abord la promotion de l'accès à une alimentation diversifiée, saine et nutritive pour tous. Il y a un deuxième axe d'orientation, c'est la promotion de la gouvernance favorisant des moyens de subsistance équitables et résilients. Et le troisième axe, c'est la promotion de la production résiliente face au changement climatique, tout en assurant la durabilité des ressources naturelles. Alors, parmi les actions qui découlent de ces principaux axes d'orientation, les actions qui sont menées, qui sont priorisées actuellement par le gouvernement de Madagascar sont d'abord, il y a la promotion de l'agriculture sensible au changement climatique. Donc, par là, on entend tout ce qui est lié à l'agroécologie, la promotion de l'agriculture biologique. Il y a aussi comme priorité la vulgarisation des techniques améliorées de production agricole pour accroître la productivité, le rendement agricole, notamment par rapport au changement climatique. Nous avons aussi des actions priorisées par rapport au renforcement de la production et la diversification alimentaire par l'amélioration de l'accès à un régime nutritionnel sain et par la mise en place de programmes de cantines scolaires pour les enfants, la mise en place de banques alimentaires, de banques de semences pour les producteurs après les chocs climatiques, et notamment dans le sud de Madagascar, qui est sujet à des sécheresses répétitives, notamment. Donc, il y a aussi la promotion de l'entrepreneuriat des jeunes et des femmes. Donc, c'est vraiment, nous considérons ce segment des cibles et c'est orienté surtout vers la transformation agroalimentaire, mais aussi avec des mesures pour la facilitation de l'accès au foncier pour les jeunes agripreneurs. Et enfin, parmi les actions prioritaires, c'est l'accent que nous mettons sur les constructions et les réhabilitations des routes et pistes rurales, ça pour améliorer la connectivité, donc la mise en relation des zones de production, des bassins de production enclavés avec les centres de marché, les centres de consommation. Donc, pour la mise en œuvre de ces actions prioritaires et de ces axes d'orientation, le gouvernement malagasy a mis en place un cadre juridique incitatif avec différents textes et lois, comme par exemple la loi sur l'agrégation agricole. Il y a la loi sur l'agriculture biologique. Il y a la loi sur les investissements. Il y a aussi une loi sur les sociétés de coopératives et des textes pour la facilitation de l'accès au foncier. Donc, tous ces instruments, je dirais, légaux vont permettre d'attirer le secteur privé pour investir dans le secteur agricole. Je veux dire par là, agriculture, élevage, pêche. Donc, voilà un peu les actions qui sont priorisées par Madagascar dans le cadre de la transformation des systèmes alimentaires.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. We have Dr. Felix Ferry from the Ministry of Health in Malawi, but I've seen that he's coming on and falling off. So, Felix, I see you. Dr. Ferry, Malawi's actually done their evidence-based and costed roadmap. So you're in your implementation phase. Can you share with us a bit more how you've been working with the Zero Hunger Coalition?
All right, no, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. Malawi has worked with the colleagues who supported us with this initiative, had been involved throughout the process, and there are lots of pieces of work that have been recommended in this, which we found it to be quite valuable in improving our food systems pathway. Only some of the challenges that we are anticipating in this is in regards to ensuring that we adopt some of the recommendations into our national policies, regulations, as well as governance structures, due to some competing interests and also competing priorities within the country. However, we are hoping that with a lot of advocacy, we may be able to influence some policy changes and establish a supportive regulation that facilitates sustainable and resilient food systems. Let me mention here that Malawi has a well-defined evidence and a costed roadmap, which we feel that is a platform that could help us in ending hunger in the country and also improve our national food systems, which could also be helpful in terms of demonstrating an innovative systems approach. As I said earlier on, the food systems transformation in Malawi is achievable, and the report itself has also given us an opportunity to sit back and see what we can do best. We feel that as a country, for us to move forward, there's a lot of need for investment in our country, especially looking at the resources. We need to make sure that we transition the 14 million people that is in Malawi into healthier diets. And also we need to promote more into the small scale producers. You all know that the country, Malawi, has been facing with multiple challenges. One of them, they are the cyclones, food insecurity, and droughts, which cause for us to generate a lot of evidence to come up with interventions and strategies that would move the country into food security and also improve our food systems as in a country. In that way, we are going to end most of the burden that we have, especially on malnutrition in the country. Climate change is not it's not a new thing in the country. This has been happening almost every year. And for us to move away from this, there's also need a lot of commitment from development partners to support the country in addressing the issues around climate change. If we are to make a meaningful food systems, which is more sustainable and also benefiting the general population in the Malawi, in the country. Having said that, data-driven approaches, they are very critical, which will enable us to have targeted interventions in areas where we can have the greatest impact, and also on transforming the food systems. This, to me, is where we need to go as a country. Resources are also critical for funding various projects and initiatives, as outlined in the recommendations, while also considering long-term perspectives. So in general, I would say that the report itself opened up to us from the nutrition point of view, from the food security point of view, on what path we need to take as a country, and also what policy areas do we need to focus on. I'm happy to report that from the nutrition point of view, we have already incorporated some of the recommendations made, because we are still under, the policy is still under review. So it just came at an opportune time. We are also lobbying with our colleagues from Ministry of Agriculture, also to incorporate some of the recommendations that are made. The agriculture policy is also under review. So we are working together with them. And the last meeting that we had with the CERES 2030, I think it proved to us that it's doable and we can move forward as a country. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fury. I'd like to now hand over to Martin Hopper from BMZ. We've heard a lot about the coalition in the last few speeches. Why do you think the approach of the coalition is useful, and what's Germany going to be doing to support it?
Well, colleagues, first of all, welcome to the German room. It is coincidence we're here. You get assigned these rooms, you cannot choose, but it is a good coincidence. Thank you for finding it. I myself had trouble finding it. And I think that is quite symbolic of the situation we're in, finding our way. And that is very much true also, finding our way to sustainable, equitable food systems, which we're trying to do. And that is exactly where science comes in. That is the guiding star. And that's why Germany commissioned CERES 2030. It was my previous minister asking for this scientific base. And we then disseminated it all over, and I'm very happy, I'm very pleased. That was in my very first days in my current position, that when we presented this evidence. So I'm very happy this transforms now to HISAT 2030, which again, the German government is rather happy to support. And I don't know if you read, well, of course you've read it, but if you read it really line by line, the last SOFI report, the Zero Hunger Coalition is one of the few coalitions explicitly mentioned as instrumental in achieving zero hunger and achieving SDG 2. Why are we doing all of this? And again, I'm happy to make us aware of this room. There's some decoration there. We usually don't even read it. It is the right to food. And Germany did not just by chance decorate this room. For us, this is what it is all about, is achieving the right to food. And that is why we're so wholeheartedly and very seriously engaged in this process, because we really see the people at the center, and we see the hungry, and we want to do something about this horrible situation we're in. I hear a bit about raising the level of ambition. I could not think of a more ambitious coalition than is the Zero Hunger Coalition. So people, if you want to be in a high ambition coalition, join the Zero Hunger Coalition. I'm very pleased to sit next to you and to have heard also of Malawi. There's other countries already that have been following that path and working closely together with you. And this is obviously why Germany will be very happy to continue working with you. We were one of the very first members of the Zero Hunger Coalition. And just to inform you, it is one out of just 4 coalitions Germany decided to join. So we're in agroecology, we're in blue foods, we're in zero hunger, and school meals, of course. And school meals, of course. So this is just to give you an idea like how much we want to focus our work. And then that will be my last allusion to this room. It might seem a little bit plain, it might seem a little bit cold, but we tend to focus. We tend to focus on what we want to achieve. And this is, I believe, what you're doing, and that's why we're happy to support it and continue supporting it and ask for others to join. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for being such an important champion of this work. The next champion of this work is from the European Commission. Leonard Mitzi's also been involved in this work for many times, but really champions the issue of sustainability, resilience, and building agriculture and food security. Leonard, why do you think this type of approach is so important to inform decision-making?
We think it's important because we are amongst like-minded. Martin and myself are in many fora almost periodically. We were also in the G7 Food Security Working Group, and you have also, this was cited in the G7 last year, and there is a continuity. So G7 wants to show leadership. For me, some key messages. First of all, and I liked a lot what Azma Latif said. If we want to be in a solution mode, we need to get the financials in the equation. We can't just speak about food systems transformation and speak about coordination amongst sort of agricultural ministries. Finance is part of the ecosystem. You can't think big if you don't get the World Bank, the IMF, the MDB reform process. This is a complex situation we are confronting. For those who have been in the G7, G20 context, L'Aquila, more than a decade ago, I can tell you, my opinion is this is more complicated. It's more complicated because you have an interface of geopolitics now. There was no geopolitics 15 years ago. So you have geopolitics, you have climate becoming more and more severe, you have conflicts I don't need to discuss, you have debt, you have restructuring of debt, you have exchange rate misalignment. You don't have the stars aligned easily, and you need to have a whole landscape of players, which is not just agricultural ministers, with all due respect, minister. It has to be the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Environment, the Minister of Finance under this tier of a president or a presidential compact. So for me, what came out of the Dakar process, Dakar compacts is important, but with one caveat, because I think the Zero Hunger Coalition has an important role to play to coordinate, to bang heads together, to tell us this is not what needs to be done, this is what needs to be done. I'll give you an example. The minister mentioned clearly issues, processes which are music to our ears as EU. Agroecology, and Minister, we are supporting a lot Madagascar on agroecological approaches. This is a big portfolio even within the CGIAR context. But you know what connects Malawi to Madagascar, besides being an African players? They are part of COMESA. So if I look at the Dakar compacts of Malawi, I see soy and rice. If I see the compact of Madagascar, I see soy and rice. And if I see the others, I see soy and rice and soy and rice. And the question is, and I challenge here the Zero Hunger Coalition, can you help these countries to prioritize whether everyone needs to do soya, everyone needs to do rice, everyone needs to do maize, everyone needs to do the same crops without specialization, without comparative advantages? Because if we want to unleash the full potential of 54 countries in Africa, we can't build silos. And I fully understand the challenge around strategic autonomy of every country, but I was in the meeting in the plenary. You will not get the food import bill down from 70, 80, 90 billion if everyone does the same stuff. So this is a big challenge, and we want to accompany you, and we are being tasked by our political masters in Brussels to start prioritizing and to coordinate. If you want to do rice, fine, but not everyone goes to rice. Diversification is important. In the Dakar Compacts, I don't see much diversification. It's the same big commodities. Sometimes it is for export, and it's not maybe the smart approach. The investment estimate of these Dakar Compacts is enormous. So the question is for the Zero Hunger Challenge coalition is, can someone challenge the numbers and tell us this is how the landscape should be? So we are there to support, but we also need to put some order in terms of prioritization, in terms of trade, private sector, and also in terms of getting the financial institutions to the risk in a smart approach, because financial institutions can't risk all portfolios that they are on the table today.
Thank you for that challenge. I think we're going to take it on. Last but not least, we have Ahmad Bahalim from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You've heard a lot, Ahmad. You've got the last word, and you've heard a lot about this complex ecosystem. Where does the Gates Foundation fit in, and where are you going to be supporting in the future?
Where does the Gates Foundation fit in? That's a big question. I'll try to break this down. We're investing in this project because we believe that what gets measured gets done. Over the last few years that we've supported Series 2030 and now HESAT 2030, we're answering the very, very basic and simplest of questions in agricultural development. We have a common goal and target under the SDG framework. We have similarly common goals and targets under the Zero Hunger Coalition. Over the past few years, we've developed a system of how to answer that particular challenge and common goal and target. At the same time, we work with our partners in countries amongst international institutions to scale up data collection efforts. So we have colleagues here in the room today from 50 by 30, the largest and most ambitious agricultural statistics effort attempted in history. And as we figure out how to measure and track progress, we're also working, as you've heard today, to track the financial flows that go into this sector. So we have a clear goal and target. We know how to measure it. We know what actions need to be taken, and we know what sorts of financial resources are necessary to achieve the goal that we've all set. From our perspective, this is how you achieve the improbable or even the impossible. Tackling zero hunger is no small challenge. So for me, as a program officer at the Gates Foundation, it's an honor, it's a pleasure to play a very small, but hopefully meaningful role in this community, this coalition that is being built to achieve zero hunger by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad. We are running late, but we did start late. So with the permission of the FAO hosts, I would like to allow 1 or 2 people to ask a question. Please don't make a comment or present your projects. Please, if you have a question about the coalition, about Hungry for Action, about HESAT 2030, you, sir, and you, madam. Let's go. That's it.
Thanks a lot. My name is Remy Setupin from UN Habitat headquarters based in Nairobi. Congratulations, excellent initiative. Just a couple of points to really echo what the European Union has said, that the you have to look cross-country, cross-territory. So for us, territorial approach is very important on such important initiative. The second point I want to make is that we have seen through the summit that there have been a flora of coalitions. Maybe there is also, in this context of evidence and cross-learning, there is maybe a need for coalition of coalitions so that we can also learn from other coalitions, because this issue of silo is starting to appear. We are in, doing the secretariat on the local 2030 coalition as well. I don't know if some of you are members of that. I know FAO is part of that, but there are many cross duplication to some extent. So I'm just something I want to mention. The last point is the evidence. The science in some parts of, you mentioned the OECD data, for instance, but in some parts of Africa, Malawi, data scarcity, we know what it is. So I just want to expand the scope of the data, that evidence. It should not just be hard numbers and scientifically proven. There are also type of data that can inform, can actually be so relevant. Maybe the coalition looking into that, but that's something sometimes you have to reemphasize, to contextualize a bit more. So again, congratulations, and UN Habitat is very much interested in such thing because hunger in urban or in the urbanization process is very important to consider. So thanks again.
Thank you. The lady next to the gentleman did not want to speak. So is there one other person who wants to ask a question? Okay. Thank you all. That's been an incredibly rich debate. There are many initiatives that you can all be part of. On the Coalition of Coalitions, I would suggest that we also defer to the UN Food Systems Hub, whose main role is to coordinate all the initiatives that emerged from the food system and who we are working closely with. But I think there've been a lot of strong messages for us to take forward. We're in a more complex situation today than we were 10 years ago, but we also have much better data, evidence, and tools to respond. And we are all, I would challenge, much better at working together to solve those questions. This is not the first time we're trying to coordinate, and I think we do a much better job. So please join us. Thank you for being here today and enjoy the rest of the stock-taking moment.